Yeah, how you doing?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Pretty good here. So, Paul Abella, WDCB. We had done this a few weeks ago, but Paul did want to address some of these, have a little bit more time to address some of these questions that I had for him regarding just the sort of the station, the situation with COVID, social distancing, gigs in Chicago, gigs elsewhere, so on and so forth. So, yeah, Paul. So the question that I had drafted for you was really, what is the current state of affairs at WDCB, and what was your first reaction to the shutdowns, and where are you right now?
The college told us that we needed to be down to basically our essential personnel only. So that was, at the time, it was all of the full-time jazz staff and our operations person and our general manager. Okay. So there were 7 of us doing the work of many more than 7 of us. And that was how we handled things for months and months. And then when the curve was flattening originally, we started opening the doors, piece by piece, and letting this guy come in. Okay, has anybody gotten sick? No. Okay, fine. Let this guy come in. And we, we're not at 100% yet. Anybody that can still do their jobs from home, we want them doing their jobs from home. Sure. And then when school started for the kids, all of a sudden, I was one of the guys doing their job from home because the kids are schooling from home. And so I'm in a couple days a week. And other than that, I record segments for everyday shows. I record the jazz calendars for, so that people know what's going on. Mostly live streaming these days. Yeah. And and then I'm actually in on Fridays. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah. I guess, now that we're in November, getting to the holiday season, where are you now, and where do you project yourself to be going into 2021?
Probably in a holding pattern for us. What we've been doing has been working, so there's probably not too much reason to change what we're doing. But if something changes, if someone gets sick, then we're going to have to address that. So obviously we beg everybody to be careful. We beg everybody to,
And so far you haven't had anybody get sick at the station.
Right.
Yeah, you've been able to maintain that, because I know some other stations have, and they've had to sort of. Well, it seems like that happened early on when people didn't really know. But as far as I know, there's only 1 or 2 stations that had an outbreak inside of the actual physical location. So it seems like the precautions that stations are taking, at least organizations, whether it be a recording station or be a recording studio, a television studio, it does seem like everybody's, due diligence on those precautions has been, at least out here in LA, has been working. I hope that this, like you were saying, kind of keeping in that holding pattern, obviously, social distancing, sanitizing things, wearing masks. I mean, they all seem like no-brainers. Like it seems like we shouldn't be having this, these spikes in the COVID cases. But, that's just, I think it's going to take the rest of the country and, to kind of come around and understand that these are just measures, and maybe with this new administration, there will be a mandate of some sort. I don't know if that's possible.
I mean, you can make the mandate whether or not you're going to have local follow through or not. That's going to be the bigger deal. So, unfortunately, I don't think you're going to see much of that.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, unfortunately. So one thing that we had touched on in terms of your job was streamlining, and I've spoken to some other people, some people involved with Jazz Week, some other DJs and program directors, and they have all, they've monitored airplay, kind of the run-of-the-mill sort of, ways of speeding things up. But I did want to hear it from you just like some maybe bullet points or some just general things that would help you speed up your job and allow you maybe to just spend more time focusing on music?
For one, and then things have been getting better in this regard. For one, allowing me to listen to music without making me download it would be amazing, especially since everybody wants you to download in WAV, and those things take up a huge amount of space. So that would be, paramount for me. Two, I really, really, really cannot stress this enough. Promoters need to stop taking anything less than, B or C grade material. The amount of time that gets wasted listening through to albums that, I don't want to deny anybody their right to release an album, but an album that clearly is not going to hold up against, the best of the new releases or the catalog stuff that we're going to play on a daily basis. Promoters need to learn how to say no. And until that happens, I think that's going to be a huge part of the logjam, is just the huge amount of stuff that we get and how much of that stuff should have never gotten to us in the first place.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think is it just the ease of being able to do a home studio thing, or do you think it's the schools that are pumping out music majors that want to sort of make their mark? Why is it that there's, and maybe some people would have a counter argument that it's a good thing that there's so much music out there that's being recorded, but why are there so many albums right now?
Right now, the joke that I've made a lot is always, the best thing about our modern environment is that anybody that wants to make a record can make a record. And the worst thing about our modern environment is that anybody that wants to make a record can make a record. And like I said, I don't deny anybody the right to it, the challenge to it, the joy of creating. Whether it's, the fact that, yes, you can do stuff at home now, through any number of free apps on your phone, right. The fact that studio time has gotten so cheap in the digital era. You can go to top-notch studios for, $50, $60, $75 an hour. Right. If you've got your act together, you can knock something out, or think you've got your act together and think you can knock something out, in a day or two. Right. So it's gotten cheap enough that people can do it, and the home stuff has gotten good enough that people can do it. So people can and people do. I don't deny. I don't want this to sound like I think that people shouldn't record. I think that sometimes, that stuff shouldn't necessarily. Well, some of that stuff shouldn't necessarily make it to us. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the thing is that when a singer is off key. So when you get a vocal album and that singer can't hit a pitch with the broadside, on the broadside of a barn, don't take the record. But we know that there are promoters out there taking those records. When a saxophonist is playing way too sharp when, it's beyond Jackie McLean, and you can hear that and you can wince when you hear it, and a promoter needs to not take that.
Well, that was kind of a conversation that I was having with Ed Trefesger, was really a way, and this would all kind of tie into sort of like monitored airplay, and just as a way to sort of standardize things would be through some of the more traditional channels, like using ISRCs for individual. This not like that. There's some sort of like that's like a threshold that you can't, or a ceiling that if you weren't good, you couldn't. Anybody could obtain this information, but like understanding how to distribute the music, and because my feeling is that a lot of these projects that you're just talking about that don't really make aren't up to snuff, or you don't feel are radio ready. my suspicion is they're probably not being distributed very widely. These could be like local artists that have just mailed you CDs.
I mean, the local artists that mail me CDs, I have no problem with that whatsoever. If you're doing this on your own dime, that's fine. And some of those folks, there have also been times when somebody local has sent me something because they didn't have the money for a promoter or for a print campaign, and it's one of the best things I've heard all year. Those happen too, right. And those make me happier than anything. The problem is so there was a local vocalist. I hope nobody figures out who this is. Local vocalist, gets a couple heavy hitters on board, does an album, and I don't know if they went to a whole bunch of different promoters and eventually cycled down to this one, or if the person in question was the first person they got out of the gate. But they took the album and, let us know that they were doing it, and, did a media buy and the whole deal. And I finally get a chance to hear it, and it was painful. And so as, kind of as a courtesy to both the promoter and trying to find something, maybe I missed it. Went back to the promoter. All right, why don't you give me some focus tracks? Because I'm not hearing it, but, maybe you've heard something that I didn't.
Yeah.
When that promoter comes back with one track that maybe might work.
Maybe might work.
That's not a failure on the artist. They wanted to document where they were at that point in time. I don't fault them for that.
Yeah.
I fault the person that took their money without having any love or joy for the project at all. And, what's more disheartening? Like you make something, you send it out yourself, and a bunch of people go, nah, man, this just isn't going to work. Or, hiring unknowingly a whole bunch of yes men who are just trying to get as much of your money as possible. Oh yeah, this will be great. I can see this being in 200 stations and, on the Jazz Week panel, and it's going to go top 10, and then you find out the hard way. Which one's the worst one?
That type of thing. That's just there would be a disingenuous nature to that. I see where you're coming from. And I would not try to play devil's advocate. I agree with you. Like I agree with you. There's no way to not agree with that. That because you are the gatekeeper at the station. I will say that the inverse has been true on my side. It's been projects that I've either been playing on or projects that I've been producing or whatever, where I thought that they would be shoe-ins. I thought they were fantastic, that they were going to, not necessarily move the needle, but were just going to be super solid projects, and not necessarily even to WDCB, but to other stations where even sometimes these people have a local connection to the album, and it just gets turned off. It's just no, this doesn't work for us. Why? It doesn't work for us. Okay, that's not information that I can give to the artist. That's that doesn't help me at all. And so maybe part of the solution in this is that dialogue is to and you are pretty brutally honest. You are brutally honest with people about what works and what doesn't. There is, sometimes there is that, you don't want to offend somebody. You don't want to whatever it is. And ultimately, are you texting me right now?
No.
No.
I can if you want.
No, that's fine. But what I was, it's like Paul Abella. I'm talking to you right now. I think that there is, because if you haven't met somebody in person or whatever, if you don't know them, there is that tendency to want to say, yeah, this just doesn't really work for us, even though you could, say, like you're saying, come on, why would you ever send this to us? Because this is not going to work for us. And you, because you wouldn't want to call somebody out in that, and I get it. So, I think it just comes down to communication, to be honest with you. I mean, and this isn't a problem necessarily limited to like radio. I mean, look at all the schools that have to take every student that comes their way. A for-profit school that is giving like an associate's degree or no degree. I mean, if they're not in the business of turning anybody away. So if a school is going to take somebody like that they know really isn't like in it, doesn't have, is it's very obvious that and I've seen a lot of this, and there's a lot of schools out here in Los Angeles that are like that. They take the person, as the student, they take them on, sort of giving them this idea that they're going to have a career in music. If they then graduate that person into the real world, well, then what that person's next cycle is what do professional artists do? They release albums and they have producers and whatever. So in a way, if you have the financial and you have the the wherewithal to do something like to go through school, record, release an album, whatever it is, and you don't have to work a day job, I mean, I think in some ways it kind of all could potentially tie together in this sort of like cycle of, I don't want to say deception, but in a way, I mean, it is in a way, because at some point, I mean, if in a way you could be the very first person in that person's life to say like, no, this doesn't cut it. And that could be a very difficult pill to swallow.
Right. And the part that I feel bad about is when, and this happens often too, is there are some great projects that come through that just aren't necessarily going to be radio friendly. Something like Junk Magic by Craig Taborn, one of my very favorite modern jazz albums. No bones about it. But how often can I play that on a mainstream jazz station?
I would say that's probably the biggest issue that we have, is we have more left of center progressive projects that are good to great that come across our table, and I want to take those projects and I want to work with those people because like I want to, right? But knowing that that they're going to get maybe like 5 or 10 stations to add them at best.
And at that, if I add you for something like that, for like Notes from the Jazz Underground, and okay, cool, and I'm gonna tell my overnight guy about it. Like there are certain versions of creative music that I've gotten him into over the years, and there are other things that he just I still can't get him to touch. Even when I'm like, man, this is like the best thing I've heard all year.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely that's far bigger. Maybe it's just because of where we are and who we are and whatever.
Sure.
That's definitely a bigger problem for us, is great projects that are very far outside of what's sort of going to be acceptable to be spun to the general public, and trying to find those outlets for. I mean, obviously you're one of those outlets. Generally the stations that are closer to 24-hour stations, they are going to have some sort of overnight program or something like that where they can kind of covertly slip in, and it's been that way for 100 years now, at least. But yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. Just to kind of pivot here to move a topic, we had talked about streaming services and the controversy behind all of the streaming services. You do subscribe to Spotify.
I do.
We had discussed more equitable streaming and distribution services like Tidal or Bandcamp. You don't feel that those are ever going to really gain public acceptance?
Bandcamp will, because Bandcamp allows you to buy music. I can actually go out and support an artist on Bandcamp. Will it ever be as big as Spotify? Absolutely not. Not until, if Taylor Swift releases her next album on Bandcamp, Bandcamp just got a huge Christmas gift, or Ariana Grande or whoever, They don't have their music on Bandcamp. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, to tell you the truth, I haven't looked. For all I know, it might be on there. But certainly they're not promoting it on Bandcamp the same way that they promote it on Spotify. And Tidal, as much as I like Tidal in a whole lot of different ways, at this point, Spotify's got all the artist tie-ins. They've got all the playlists that people are putting their, stuff on that now are, I think, we've talked about this. I've talked to other promoters about this. That now this is becoming like a big way that people are breaking new artists. There's a brass band playlist that I use, kind of just to see what's new and happening that I might not have bought yet. It was actually, it's kind of hilarious. It was kind of sneakily put together by this, New Zealand brass band called the Hot Potato Band. Mm-hmm. And, okay. They put all this great Dirty Dozen and Rebirth and Hot 8 and, Big Six brass band, like all this really cool stuff. And then like every few tunes, it's one of their tunes.
Okay. Right. Yeah, you're talking about that.
And so it's a great way to be like, hey, look, we hold up next to all these other bands, right? So, but that's pretty much like the only way I've discovered any new brass bands in the last year, because nobody else is doing anything with that stuff, even though, to my ears, it's some of the best music that gets made. And so, yeah, when you have platforms like that, it's not just Spotify as an institution, it's what you can do within those borders of Spotify's app that make it, usable. And I don't like the way that they do business. Daniel X seems like a piece of garbage. But, sometimes you got to dance with the devil and you just hope he knows a few good steps.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think anybody is really cheerleading for Spotify or YouTube or any of these larger social media platforms. And I have, for a long time, I feel like Spotify essentially is it is a social media company, because you can create public playlists, you can distribute those public playlists. They steal all your information and sell it to third parties, just like, that's their business model. Right. They take content for free. Maybe you don't have, you have your own. There's really, I'm actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm struggling to find a checkbox that would disqualify Spotify from being a social media company. And the streams for an artist, artists basically donate. You give your content, your musical content, to the platform for free. Looking at the back end on it, on the number of streams and all of that, is in some ways akin to likes and all of that type of stuff, that keeps you moving forward. Ostensibly, those are real people listening to them. I've seen some data with some candlesticks that are, go from 0 to 1,000, like perfectly to 1,000 in one day, and then back down. Which, come on, really? What the hell's up with that? And so it like you said, it's this dance with the devil. It's choosing this, not even a lesser two evils, just choosing another. And I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't call it evil,
but
yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't go as far as to say that somebody like the CEO of Spotify is an evil person, or that's an evil company.
I would definitely say, even if you don't want to say that Spotify is evil as an entity, because it does help you break artists. It is part of the landscape. Yeah. But the guy in charge that's trying to get artists to take even less per stream now, that's evil, especially doing that in a pandemic when, now you're down to you can't go out and play. People aren't buying CDs anymore, because what was the one way that people were buying CDs was at gigs. It was, they're souvenirs at this point, So what are you doing? You're trying to take away even more from artists at the time that they need it absolutely the most. There's no way that qualifies as anything other than evil.
Well, pivoting to the gig aspect, this is another sort of, and it ties in. I agree with what you're saying regarding gigs, regarding the fact that his touring, obviously, up until the pandemic, there was a renaissance of touring. You look at Dead and Company or Derek Trucks or AC/DC or the Stones or anything like that. Those were, or Taylor Swift. Those are huge. I mean, those are the $1 million businesses that were curtailed immediately, and that's obviously, and that has. I agree with you. Has trickled down to where to the average local artist who would be trying to sell T-shirts or whatever tchotchke at a show. We had discussed this a few weeks ago. I don't know if we're in the same position. I just had a gig last week get canceled the day of. We were supposed to play Thursday up in Pasadena, actually for a private show that basically the city sent them a letter. The venues basically sent like a cease and desist along like, you can't have this event, or at least not with us. I don't know why that would make a difference, but the gig situation in the Southwest is I'm hoping is going to remain the same because we can do stuff outside. I mean, it's like 75 degrees here right now. Looks like it's a nice day.
Who would play indoors out there?
Well, I mean, it's true. You know, it is. I mean, you're right. I think everybody should be out here should be absolutely taking advantage of that. There's a big like production values and like high quality sound is what is even in clubs is a big thing out here. You know, everybody's, multi-tracking while they're performing, it's like, the production values of music and art out here are super high, and the bar to hit that is, and so if you have a club, it's not that easy to just pivot towards like sticking the band out inside of some vestibule like that was, and it's not going to happen at like Herb Alpert's at Vibrato. A lot of venue, just because that's not the way it's set up. But then again, if you look at the marquee outdoor venue here, the Hollywood Bowl has been shut down. That's entirely outdoors. Well, it's because you're sitting 6 inches away from somebody. It's and I understand. But the biggest thing out here, and I don't know if this is the way it's in Chicago right now, or New York or anywhere else, is the liability. It's just simply too. It's too risky for a business if live music is not like an integral part of what they're doing, and there's not that many venues out here that live music is the absolute is the only draw. Most places have food and whatever, and they've been able to operate as restaurants and pub restaurants going forward. But just having the expense of the live music plus the extra liability on top of it is just one step too far for them. I guess my question was, and then the question that I had asked you a couple weeks ago, do you think, I mean, is it going to be dead in the rest of the country until April, May next
Probably.
year?
I mean, here, I mean, they finally, they've put the kibosh on everything. There was one venue that is open legally in Northern Illinois right now, and that was because they sued the state, and they got an injunction from a local judge. Yeah. And they can basically stay open until probably the appellate court shuts them down. Okay. But the Showcase is closed, Andy's is closed, the Green Mill's closed, Winters has been closed. The one that sucked was Fitzgerald's. I know you know Fitzgerald's back in your old hometown. So the way that they had their whole thing set up, they had a huge patio, and they set up the patio for live music. And, even with people spread out, you could still get, 50, 60, 75 people there, with some distance. And so they were planning on just putting a couple heaters on stage. The last time we played there, they had one of the heaters all set up, but it was 60 degrees in November, so you didn't have to worry about it. They had heaters set up, and they had like the whole deal, and like they had chimeneas all over the place, so like you could kind of keep kind of warm, and just bundle up and wear layers if you want to see some live music. And even they just shut down. So here I think the only things that are going right now is the Fulton Street Collective is still doing streaming shows, and that's about it. Other than that, people are doing stuff from their houses. So
they're not doing because I saw some performances at Andy's. They've shut that down.
They shut that down. Like we played at Andy's right after they started opening up again.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And their setup was amazing. You had to have your mask on unless you were putting food in your mouth. You had to have your mask on even when you were sitting down. God bless them for it. There was plexiglass between the stage and the patrons. You know, they'd taken out a whole bunch of tables. You know, they had bar blocked off so like you could only sit like one, and then, you know, 3 seats down another person could sit. So they were doing everything about as right as you could, and they had early on they had set everything up so they were catching live sound, and they were doing streaming concerts. And I don't know why they stopped it, because, you know, unless they were just not making a single dime off of it. But, you know, even if you're making $100, you know, that's 100. You know, I mean, because you still got rent, you still got everything else, you still got all these expenses. You know,
right.
At least you're making something. I'm kind of shocked
they got to pay
the showcase and Andy's aren't doing that, but.
Well,
but hey,
they have to pay. There's a minimum they're gonna have to pay their staff. Yeah, I don't know either. It's entirely I don't know. I don't know if they're getting PPP money to continue to pay their rent and whatever, or just, you know, to keep their staff. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Well, yeah. That was pretty much everything that I had in terms of questions for you, at least in terms of, you know, what you're seeing both as a performer and a DJ. I agree with you. I agree with you when you were with regards to sort of setting a threshold for the types of music that gets distributed to radio. Whether that threshold is from the person sending it or the person receiving it, you're going to be that ultimate cutoff. You know, right. That's it. Like, that's, you know, what goes on the radio because of a program director or a DJ deciding that this is something that they can spin. And I think that that's always, I mean, that in some ways that is the ultimate test. All the streaming services, anybody can put. This podcast or spoken word. Anybody who has access to CD Baby and the internet can put their music or whatever it is on these streaming services. So I guess in some ways that really is an ultimate value to broadcast radio is making sure that litmus is in place.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, I think I hold different avenues to different standards. You know, like if if you're a musician, you're really proud of the thing that you just put out. Yeah, be proud of the thing that you just put out. You know, it's not up. You know, whether or not I find it to be airworthy or not should not take away from your pride in, you know, actually doing the footwork and doing the legwork to get the thing done, you know, and that's something that's an accomplishment that nobody can take away from you.
Right.
And if you want to send that to radio, send it to radio. You know, but when there are promoters that are paid to be intermediaries between the artist and the and radio or media, you know, I wish that some of those folks would take their job a little more seriously. And learn to say no, you know, and have objective standards, you know, like I said earlier, like there is definitely in key and out of key, you know, like there is definitely, you know, sticks somewhere close to where the metronome started at the end of the song, you know.
Are you rushing or are you dragging?
Right. And until I can start throwing desks at people, I leave that to you. But, you know, yeah, I mean, there are like objective benchmarks. And I think when people see dollar signs instead of seeing, you know, as I said before, like, you know, I feel for an artist that like finds out the hard way after like, you know, a print guy took their money, and after a promoter took their money, and after this guy took their money, and after that guy took their money, to find out the hard way after they spent all this stuff that really that their disc doesn't meet these benchmarks that people are going to measure them at, you know. Mm-hmm. I think that's the cruelest thing of all, you know. So, you know, it's way less cruel to say no. And if that means that there need to be less promoters, that means that there need to be less people on the print field, that means that there need to be, you know, a little less of everything, I'm okay with that. And I wish other people were okay with that too. And that's probably really dark.
I was going to say, I hope that you don't throw a desk at me the next time you send I send something to you that you don't like.
I'll text you a picture of a desk.
A desk all the way from Chicago to Los Angeles, right? Cool. Well, thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. And yeah, Paul Abella from WDCB.
Thank you. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.